Hello, and welcome back to the GorillaBiker. So today what we're going to be doing is changing the wheel bearings in the rear wheel of my Honda CBF1000 because it broke on the way back from Scotland. So to show you, I don't know will you be able to see this, but the wheel bearing is moving. Well, you'll see it when it comes out anyway, but basically it's essentially collapsed, which was a pity. Because the trip to Scotland went fantastic. There will be a video coming about that. It might be out before this, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so basically look, that'll all be part of the Scotland video. Today what we're focusing on is just changing out that rear wheel bearing. I have a set from All Balls. The number is your front or rear. This one, yeah. So the All Balls set is the 25-1257 for this 2011 model of the Honda CBF, which is the Mark 1. If you go on to All Balls website, you can search your bike, the year, and it will give you all of the bearings that they stock for your bike. It just makes the ordering process easier. I did buy these through Freeman Motorcycles in Clonmel, which I paid for. So this is the reason I bought All Balls, is it's easier. Yes, you can just order bearings individually. You don't have to use All Balls kits basically. It's just that they're not very expensive and they come with the dust seal. So I mean, I could save probably €10 or just buy the All Balls kit. So I just bought the All Balls kit. Without further ado, let's start knocking out these bearings off this wheel. So first and foremost, what you want to do is just take out your sprocket carrier. We'll change the bearing on that separately. And as you can see here, so one thing you want to do is there's a spacer just in here between the bearings, and you want to shove that to one side so you can get at it. So I know this one's exposed. I'm going to knock out this bearing first because it's the good one, so I'm more confident of this one coming out well. Don't worry if your cush drives fall out, by the way. They can go back in easy enough. I'm just going to move you guys closer. A wild splat has appeared. Splat? Nah, no interest in us. Now, what I would recommend doing is getting yourself something like this, just a long, straight bar that will act as a drift. So I don't have any fancy lights in here. I'm actually missing a lot of lights. So basically, once you move the spacer to one side, you will expose some of the bearing. And you just try and knock it out. Oh, the bearing, oh, can you see that? Focus. The bearing is moving out, so we just keep bashing it. And there you go, well, number one bearing is out. And that's the spacer that goes between the bearings, so we'll clean that up before it goes back in as well. And there is old bearing number one. And this stuff absolutely stinks. So now to get out the crappy bearing. So this is what I was actually concerned about. My bearing, and it's what I had guessed, was the dust seal when I popped that out. I forgot to show you that earlier, sorry. So the dust seal when I popped that out actually contained some ball bearings and stuff. So it looks like it had already fully collapsed, which means you can actually see lumps of cage here. So that's the cage that holds your ball bearing. I'll explain ball bearings in a while, I'll explain ball bearings in a while. But now my outer race, which is the outside of the bearing, is actually stuck in here, and I need to figure out how to get it out. So I'm going to figure out how to get that out, and I'll come back to you and let you know how I did it, because this might take a while. And we got all the bearings out eventually. So this one was easy. All I did was flip it over, remove the spacer from here. If the spacer is stuck on you, just get a socket and drive it through from this side. I think it was about a 15 that fitted for me, and I drove the spacer out through here, and then I drove the bearing out from this side with this piece of wood mostly, just because that'd keep it nice and flat for me, and then I finished it off with the drift we used earlier. Now for the fun story. The wheel. So what was left of the wheel bearing was pretty much this. The inner race and all the cage had broken down. So I'm just gonna go grab what it should have looked like. So to show you, this is a normal bearing with the full seals intact, okay? So that's what they did look like. That's the one from the sprocket carrier. This is what it did look like when I removed the seals. So this is what the other rear wheel bearing should look like. There is actually a little bit of play in this one as well, so this one was going. So that side to side wiggle, I don't know if you're going to see it on camera, that's bad. These should be rock solid. And then this was the outer race of the one which I had to cut out of the wheel, essentially, because it just was absolutely jammed in there after this all fell apart. And there's my ball bearings and whatnot. So what I'm going to do now is just turn off the camera again and clean up the wheel, just make sure it's all clean, and then we can press in the new bearings. Now, so when you're putting back in these bearings, obviously you can just bash that straight in as is, right? But what I would suggest doing, and I learned all this stuff from Ari Henning, okay? So also this, I took off this little rubber band that goes around here. So that, remember to put that back on as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to heat the hub, and that's why I took out that little rubber band, so I could heat around here. Now, and then another thing that you absolutely do not have to do, it's optional, because this is what's called an interference fit bearing. So when that goes in there, there's no space left, okay? So what I'm going to do is heat this, put on a little bit of grease in the bearing, and then bop it in with basically just a correctly sized thing, which you'll see in a second. The things that you use on ratchets, sockets, a socket. So another thing here is just make sure it's going in square, so otherwise you're going to be fairly miserable. It's gone in slightly off square, so I'm just going to have to pop it back out again. Yeah, so now you can see basically that I pressed in the other side, and you would have noticed I used my old bearing a bit to get it started, just to get it to go in flat, because it was misbehaving. So now we're just going to heat this side. Don't forget your spacer. So my spacer is gone in there, which is very important. Spacer has to go in. If the spacer doesn't go in, you're going to be a very sad individual, full of misery and regret. It should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. If you're using fire, be careful, because fire is hot and will burn you. Yes, I do feel like I should say that, even though it is kind of common sense, but still. So when you kind of hear it bottom out, you're bottomed out, you're good. And then you just want to put in your dust seal, which you should just be able to press in with your hands. But again, it's still hot, so just be careful. Don't burn yourself. Now, so then you can check your bearings. They're good, nice and solid. So now, oh yeah. Now we got to press back in this one, which will be probably fine, I hope. Just need to find a bearing thing big enough for it. A socket. So the same process in this one. I've already cleaned, by the way, all inside here. Just make sure you do clean it. You don't want it dirty and messy, otherwise the bearing might not press back in nice. And there's that one seated all the way around. Again, that ringing you can hear, that means it's seated, or as far as I know it does. And again, then you want to just pop in your dust seal, making sure not to burn yourself again, because you will burn yourself and it will be unpleasant. and is that seated as well. And the thing about these ones is, the nice thing about these bearings is you don't actually need to put any grease on these at all, because they're an interference bearing, right? So what the interference fit means is they go in there and they just sit where they sit. But the nice thing about it is basically that they're sealed. So these bearings, like this one, they're sealed, so they're greased already. So you can see on, where is it? This bearing here that I opened, okay, 1 second. So on this one here that I opened, you can see there's grease already inside in it. And that grease is kind of permanently there. So when these go, they go. These are consumable items. Then this spacer here, don't forget to put that back in at the back, which is actually quite a tight fit for some reason. Oh, it's gone completely arseways on me now. So that's the one that I removed with the other socket. But basically now that's it. We can reassemble the whole section of the bike. And just in case you haven't seen it before, so these are your cush drives. I don't know if you've ever seen cush drives, but cush drives basically are what stops the slapping, for lack of a better word. And they just sit in like that, and like that, and so on and so forth, before you put back in your actual hub carrier. So that's it. The wheel bearings have been replaced in the rear wheel. I'm going to do the front wheel now. It's the exact same process. The front is actually faster because it's just 2 wheel bearings. One thing to be aware of is if you have something like a Phaser or whatever else, my old Phaser 600 for instance, the S2, they have what's called a tapered needle roller bearing on the rear wheel, which is a nightmare to replace. I replaced one on the Phaser years ago, and the best thing to do, to be honest, is just pop your rear wheel off from time to time and just repack that tapered roller bearing with grease, which is what I started to do when I changed it. The thing was still perfect when I sold it. So that is my advice there. So is this doable? It is doable, unless you have something like what happened to my rear wheel bearing. So the one that collapsed, honestly, I would just say hand it over to a garage, because that took me, I think, about 5 hours to just machine that out, because I was being so super careful not to damage my wheel. And the reason for that is, why it's important is, obviously you can go ham and just cut out this outer race as quickly as you like, but then you have to replace a wheel if you damage it badly, you know what I mean? One thing I did forget to mention is when you have your bearings out as well, just check your inner wheel for cracks and stuff. Mine was fine, but especially if you've had a bearing that went like this one, because generally what happens with bearings when they go is they'll let you know first. My one didn't. My one, I think, it looked like, sorry, not did look like, the entire outer seal had actually broken down, which is obviously how it collapsed. So I would say that happened really, really quick, which is why it gave me no warning. It was raining a lot in Scotland. That video is to come. But just be aware, listen out for noises. Do check the play on your bearings from time to time, especially if you have your wheels off, because this isn't fun. Machining out a broken outer race, it's not fun at all. It took me basically the whole day to get all of this done, just on the rear wheel. But I'm very, very happy to have that bike back. So rear wheel is on, chain is tightened and everything else, and cleaned and re-lubed. So it's good to go again, which is fantastic. Because yeah, that was I've been out without this bike for a week, and that's the longest it's ever been down for. So I do have fresh oil and stuff to go into it as well, so that's going to happen over the next couple of days. And yeah, then we're back on the road with Big Bertha. So yeah, but yeah, if you do have a bearing that has collapsed, it might be worth your while just to drop the wheel off and drop it into a garage if you don't want to go through that misery. It's doable, but it comes back to the time and patience thing. Like literally, it's just patience. If you go at it too fast, too hard, no plan your way through it, you're gonna damage your wheel. Like literally, it's just time and patience to machine this thing out. Which is why I couldn't obviously record it, because my camera would have died a long time ago. Anyway, such is life. So yeah, look, that's it. I'm going to change out the front wheel. I said the codes for the wheel bearings at the start of the video. If you want them put in the comments, just let me know. I'll keep the cards for this bike. If not, I would highly recommend looking up allballsracing.com. They have a finder for everything that they make that can get you the bearings that you need. So it's look, it's a little bit more expensive than ordering the bearings separately, like a little bit, but I think it's worth it because you get all the dust seals and everything comes in the kit. Like, I don't know, you'd have to go buy the dust seals separately anyway. So for me, I just think the all balls kit makes sense. It's really the cheapest overall kind of job, but you know, that's it. So yeah, basically look, what you need to do is knock your bearings out with a drift or something like that from each side like I showed you. Not forgetting to take out your spacer and put back in your spacer, very important points. And then clean your seat, your bearing seat, heat up the rim if you can, if you have a torch. You don't have to heat up the rim, it just makes your life a lot easier if you do. And then just bang in the new bearings carefully. Make sure they go in straight. If they don't go in straight, like you saw me doing, flip the wheel back over, pop it out a little bit and just re-straighten it. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you want to get your wheels powder coated, this is also how you do it. You can reuse bearings if you take them out the correct way, carefully. A bearing puller is the best way to do that if you want to reuse them. But yeah, so hopefully now the CBF is good for a long time to come yet. Time will tell. I'm just happy that I got it home. So, massive shout out to Up Two Down Insta. I think I'll put a link in the description. And his dad, they helped get the bike from Belfast in his van to Meath, and then Toaster brought my van from Kilkenny up to Meath, and then we got the bike home that way. So big effort involved to get the bike home, because my insurance, which is supposed to have a 24/7 recovery service, didn't answer the phone. But there's a video coming on that, so I'm not pleased about it. But we'll talk about that later. The good news is the bike is fixed, and I'm glad that we did it, because this bearing, the other wheel bearing, I know you can't see that, but I can actually feel how that one's shaking now. Is that caused by the fact the other one collapsed and I kept riding the bike to get it to the ferry? Probably. This bearing could have been perfect before that. We'll never really know, but either way, these bearings are done. They're dust, they're changed, and hopefully the bike's good for another 20,000 miles. So if you've watched, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions on this, please do let me know in the comments. Where I learned this from was actually videos done by Ari Henning back in the day. I'm actually not sure how long ago it was, but quite a while. I've learned a lot from Ari, whether he knows it or not. Ari Henning is the man, and I appreciate everything he's done on YouTube to show people how to do this stuff. He always makes it look a lot easier than it is in reality though, so that's why I did this, so you could see an average dumbass like myself struggle through it. But anyway, as always, a very special thank you to my patrons. Thank you for the kind support when I told you about the bearing collapsing, because I was pretty upset about it. Not really, I mean, these things happen, but look, that's for the Scotland video, which is coming. And yeah, until next time, thank you very much for watching. Adios. Outro crew. Look at the state of this. Look at the state of it. Actually, hold on. So outro crew, to explain bearings, right? This piece here is called your outer race, right? This piece here is called your inner race. What sits between the outer and the inner race, and this is just one type of cage roller ball bearing, okay? Then in that little bit there, and they're not actually the ball bearings, that's the cage you can see, right? The cage has the ball bearing secured. The ball bearings sit in a groove, which you can actually see on this one. That little groove in there, hey, focus. That little groove in the center is where the ball bearings sit. And that's how they stay in there. So that's why when the cage falls apart, and when you start to get a little bit of movement, that's why I say these are consumable. Because the inner race will literally, as happened with this one, fall out, and you're just left with the outer race sitting in there. But that's basically what it is. This is press fit. So you can press fit either the outer or the inner race, which, like, if we secure the inner race, the outer race can turn, and if we secure the outer race, the inner race can turn. And that's basically what bearings do. So this is press fit into the wheel, and the axle is here. That allows the wheel to just turn on the axle, and I don't know why it's unfocused again. Stay here, and that allows the wheel to turn like that. So that's why these are consumable parts. These things do a hell of a lot of work, because obviously you also have like a constant dragging on these as your wheel is working. So These do a lot of work. Well done, bearings. Anyway, bye.